This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform for building your brand and growing your business online. Stand out with a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything. Your products, content you create, and even your time. If you'll consult the graph, you'll see that long before there was aura, there was swag. And in the late 2000s and early 2010s, there was a whole swag era of fashion. Perhaps one of the most loud, bizarre, and irreverent eras of cultural fashion, the swag era of fashion was an audacious, bold, colorful reaction to the early internet, underground hip-hop, and electronic club bangers. While many would regard this era as too recent to make a comeback, it looks like there could be a huge resurgence of the swag era that nobody wants to talk about. What's good, everybody? My name is Karsten Craning, and welcome back to another YouTube video. If you don't know me, I am a clothing designer who also does fashion commentary occasionally here on YouTube. And today we're going to be going over the swag era style. We're gonna be talking about where it came from, the history of it, what exactly it entails, as well as the resurgence that is just happening now that nobody wants to talk about. Swag as a term originally comes from the word swagger, traces its roots all the way back down to William Shakespeare. Swagger as a term describes a way of walking. To walk with swagger is to walk with a sense of confidence. But the term really began to describe one's own style in the early 2000s with hip-hop culture, with the first account of someone using the word swag being Jay-Z in 2001, using it on the song All I Need.
I guess I got my swagger back. Mama, they said I killed the man. Well, I guess I got the...
Swag sort of shifted from talking about the way somebody walks to sort of a certain style. But it isn't until the late 2000s that we see it describing a specific type of style. And the word swag would just be much more than just a description of one's own personal style to becoming a specific subculture of style. Swag as a subculture or a style is an evolution of hip-hop culture. The swag era style of hip-hop culture was reacting to the rise of electronic pop and indie sleaze hipster culture. You could really think of the swag era of fashion as the hip-hop cousin to indie sleaze, because it shares a lot of similarities with indie sleaze and hipster culture, but is somewhat different and comes from hip-hop. Most importantly, both subcultures ran adjacent to each other post the recession, with indie sleaze coming a little bit earlier and swag era following closely behind it. What makes the swag era of style or subculture so interesting is that while it's definitely tied to hip-hop primarily, it's secondarily sort of attached to electronic pop. Is the music that comes from the swag era doesn't really have any cohesive sonic styles, but instead what unites swag era music is the terminology of the people, using the word swag to describe their style and the somewhat similar clothes they were wearing. It makes it a very loose subculture with little cohesion beyond the clothes themselves. It's a type of hip-hop culture that was notably a lot more metrosexual than sort of the tough guy style that hip-hop culture was known for. A lot of this is thanks to sort of the nerdy rap guys. Artists like Kanye West, Kid Cudi, and Drake were becoming super popular at the time, and they would use their love of style and fashion to compensate for the fact that they weren't from the streets or as macho as many other rappers were. Their own sort of sense of metrosexuality and fashion forwardness was pushed as cool to sort of fill this void of the macho image that most hip-hop artists were known for, which would eventually make its way into jerk dance culture on the West Coast. Many jerk dance groups would adopt this sort of metrosexual style and would refer to it as swag. Swag style would be composed of a lot of different elements, but most importantly would be, of course, the snapback. The snapback would originally be from 90s hip-hop culture, but it would be brought back by artists like Tyga, Mac Miller, and Wiz Khalifa, in sort of their own hipster style of bringing something very old back and making it modern. In fact, Tyga would write a whole song about how he brought the snapback back. But the snapback is really the key core sort of element of swag era fashion. It is sort of the staple item that you can recognize swag era style from. At the time, you saw a lot of Chicago Bulls snapback, which is probably the most popular type of snapback people would wear would be Cookie Monster or Sesame Street snapbacks. This represents a key kind of tenet of swag style, which is to ironically sample nostalgic childhood imagery, and then it would be contrasted with more edgy sort of trendy styling. You would see a lot of ironic, bold t-shirts with some sort of strange, crass message on them a lot of the time, such as YOLO, a lot of shirts that say "My haters hate swag," a lot of bold, sort of ironic-esque messages. The other huge hallmark of swag era style was skinny jeans. Skinny jeans would find their way into swag era style as they would be an adaptation of the Eddie Slimane style of skinny jeans that had become so popular during the indie sleaze era. What made it different though with sort of the swag style is as oftentimes these skinny jeans were in very bright colors, often white, purple, red. The skinny jeans that were worn were often super bright and super loud. And skinny jeans being such a big part of this culture, especially this being from hip hop culture, was super controversial at the time. Because skinny jeans were so opposite of the baggy jeans and baggy clothes that had been so associated with hip hop culture for so long, it was met with a lot of controversy. Homophobia came from the rest of the hip hop community and would specifically target the swag era musicians. So you'll just find a lot of hip hop bars from this era referencing skinny jeans in one way or another because it was very, very controversial in hip hop circles. But sort of the bright colors didn't just extend to skinny jeans, but also all the clothes of this era with a very distinct color palette, there being a lot of purple, neon, and then this aquatic diamond blue that you see everywhere. This color palette was very candy-like and bright. And the diamond blue color is interesting because it even made its way into some very popular brands of the time, such as Diamond Supply, who would have a lot of their items be this diamond blue color. Two of the most popular and associated brands with the swag era would be Diamond Supply and Obey. What's notable about these brands is they would be sort of this bridge between just swag era styling and true streetwear subculture. More on that later. Other hallmarks of the swag style would be studded clothes, fedoras, and fake glasses. All of these elements really came from hipster culture or the electronic pop culture that sort of had a marriage. There were specifically a lot of artists who would mix sort of hip hop culture with this electronic pop. And some good examples of that include MIA, Kesha, Crenshaw, Justin Bieber, and of course LMFAO. It would sort of be this hipster swag electronic pop crossover that was definitely more separated from the hip hop sphere of it all. This is certainly where the style gets the most mainstream. But also, the swag era was not just this sort of mainstream Justin Bieber, LMFAO thing. There was also a more underground side to this style. Swag era style is where you sort of see the first type of streetwear or clothing style to get cultural traction due to social media. You saw people posing in specific ways who would wear this clothes. They would have specific filters. There would be these sort of cultural nuances that would come with the way you posted that would have to do with the clothes you are wearing. You sort of see the first type of social media influencers who are specifically swag streetwear influencers.
Hey YouTube, I know this is probably lame, but I'm just gonna show you guys my snapback collection. Crooks and Castles, another 100 snapback.
Anyways, let's get to what they look like on feet. Alright guys, so
This was sort of the first era in which social media fashion had a resemblance to our relationship with social media fashion today. As the swag style evolved from 2010 to 2013, you saw an angle of it which definitely went that more mainstream route, but then there was an angle of it that definitely meshed more with streetwear and luxury clothing, a more underground angle of swag era style. The mainstream would push more into the bright colors, loud prints, and sort of hipster electronic pop sensibilities. The more underground streetwear version of swag style that would begin to split off would be slightly more gothic or edgy and be tied more to hip hop culture. A great example of this is the brand Pyrex, which was the predecessor to Virgil Abloh's Off-White. Ricardo Tisci was also very influenced by this style, and he would end up helming the brand Givenchy, and he would sort of bring his own interpretation of this era of style and put it down the runway. Tisci would have these very interesting silhouettes, these loud printed t-shirts with studs, and it would sort of become this more elite style of swag that was more streetwear and gothic influenced. Margiela Futures were also seen as a fashion grail shoe at the time, and they would become hugely coveted in this era. And then perhaps the greatest sort of cultural thing to come from this era was Supreme becoming popular. Diamond and Obey would sort of set the seeds for these skater streetwear brands to become popular. Supreme would sort of become this elusive golden goose in the mix. It was sort of the if you know, you know brand, where only the most elite and sort of culturally relevant artists would know about this brand. And this would sort of set the stage for Supreme to become one of the biggest brands in the hypebeast era. Most important figures in this was also A$AP Rocky. A$AP Rocky would sort of be the prime figure who would bridge the swag era style with streetwear, and then he would also sort of shift the culture away from swag eventually. Early in A$AP Rocky's career with songs like Purple Swag, Peso, Rocky would be sort of one of the last great swag era artists who would evolve and push the style. Rocky would push brands like HBA, Pyrex, Calm the Fuck Down, and he would be one of the main people who were mixing streetwear, this sort of swag style, and then also bringing high fashion more into the mix. A$AP Rocky would push his version of swag style and then would also ultimately reject it and kill it in hip hop culture. Would eventually see the swag era of clothing kind of come to an end in 2014, and especially by 2015. A$AP Rocky, Kanye West, Travis Scott, and other hip hop artists would abandon the style in favor of more streetwear and high fashion luxury looks, and thus the swag era would meet its end. Let me quickly transition to the sponsor of today's video, Squarespace. As many of you know, besides doing YouTube, I'm also a clothing designer, and Squarespace is integral to me personally for running my business. I'm able to host all of my products with an online store that I built through Squarespace. Squarespace helps me manage my orders, market to my customers, and be able to easily update my website when new products are launched. Whether you sell physical goods, digital content, or services, Squarespace has the tools you need to start selling online. Getting started with Squarespace is easy. All you have to do is select a professionally designed Squarespace website template with options for every use and category. Then customize your look, update content, and add features to fit your needs. Transform any template into your own and stand out online on every device. So whether my customers are coming from mobile or desktop, I know they're still getting the ideal experience and functionality. Easily launch your website and get discovered fast with integrated optimized SEO tools so you show up to more people more often and grow the way you want. Squarespace makes my life easier with its fast and reliable website hosting and design templates, which makes sure I can focus on the things I need to make sure my business is running successfully. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/KarstenKroning to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video.
On the edge of your seat, on the tip of your toes. I'm not wed to you now, man.
How would swag style start to come back now? As far as trends being reintroduced into the trend cycle and being sampled again, swag era style is arguably way too recent to be resampled. There's this sense where the cycle is happening too fast because there are so many people who experienced this style before, and to see it coming back so quick is kind of bizarre. However, considering how much swag era style has a crossover with indie sleaze and how many elements they share, with indie sleaze coming back, it makes sense that some more obscure artists would push this type of style and become interested in it. Snow Strippers has experimented a lot with these aesthetics. While they're known for sort of having an indie sleaze style, they've taken elements of the swag era and brought it not only into their personal style, but also into the aesthetics of their music videos and album artwork. And so pieces of swag era style started to break their way into certain underground circles, which are already sampling sort of the indie sleaze world. One of the other huge proponents of why you're starting to see swag era is because of the resurgence of jerk music through a new evolution of it called hood trap or jerk and B. While the original jerk music was a huge push of swag style on the West Coast back in the early 2010s, artists like Xavier So Based has taken a lot of inspiration from that culture. And what Xavier So Based has really done is really evolved that style of music into something new, called jerkin B or hood trap. While initially jerkin B or hood trap was just sonic or musical inspiration from this era, other artists in the jerkin B or hood trap scene, particularly from the UK, have started taking styling cues and aesthetic cues from the swag culture that the original jerk music was tied to. Most notably, we see this in artists like Fresh Boy Swag or Fake Mink. Not only do their album covers and musical promotions often harken back to this era of social media and the swag era of style, but both Fake Mink and Fresh Boy Swag tend to dress sort of like they're from this era. With Fresh Boy Swag being more direct and nostalgic, you can see his styling is more closely tied to like the LMFAO look. Fake Mink has a slightly more nuanced take when it comes to his personal style, with Fake Mink taking elements from that early sort of streetwear swag overlap, as well as some more contemporary styling things as well. Interesting to see because a lot of artists are just nostalgia baiting by using this style. But Fake Mink in particular has some sort of evolved take on it that brings modernized elements into it as well. One really good example of something he does differently is he takes a lot of the childhood media concepts that we saw in the original, but instead of doing them in this very ironic, sort of jaded way, he does it in a much more innocent, nostalgic, or sincere way. Whereas a lot of the artists besides Fake Mink who are referencing this era are doing it in this very ironic, detached way, Fake Mink is doing it in a way that feels more genuine and nuanced and has some sort of original artistic leaning to it. Fake Mink is pushing it in its new original direction, and it's sort of impossible to say at this point where it'll go. And that's the thing is that even though this is becoming a trend, it's kind of too early to see exactly how it will 100% play out. But looking at a trailblazer like Fake Mink and his aesthetic and style choices is probably the best indicator of where this will all go. What do you think? Will swag era fashion really come back and dominate hip hop culture and other subcultures again? Or is this just going to be a micro trend that a few artists are doing that's going to die out? Let me know in the comments what you all think. And if you like this video, hit the subscribe button. And if you would like, definitely go check out my brand as well. Again, my name is Karsten Craning. Thank you so much for watching this video and have a great day.